welcome back to Mason Zero ASMR. I am Sophia, and I am here to talk about my Magic the Gathering Standard deck. So this deck is a 3-color deck. It is red, white, and green. It is mostly a humans deck, but it has some clues and cheating stuff into play, so it's kind of a fun deck, I think. I haven't actually looked at any of the, deck guides or, builds that people have done for the humans deck, so I'm not really sure what sort of creatures they're running or any planeswalkers or what. I think most of the humans deck is green-white. I did splash in some red, which that's mostly for Nahiri and Marlon Cord, which you can see right in the front here. But that's pretty much all the red besides some removal, because the red has pretty good burn spells, of course, so I have some of that stuff. But yeah, so without further ado, I will get into it. I will start off with all of my humans that are in this deck. So, up first I have Audric, Lunarch Marshal. He is 3 and a white for 3/3, legendary creature, human soldier. At the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. The same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, sculpt, trample, and vigilance. So this card, besides being a human, he's pretty good if your creatures have some sort of ability, which a few of my creatures do. It's not hugely important, so I only have 2 of him in this deck. Besides being a legendary creature, so legendary rule applies. But he's just really good for a human, and can make all my other creatures, gain flying or something like that, which is really awesome. Next I have Thalia's Lieutenant, which I feel like is pretty much mandatory for humans deck. It's 1 and a white for a 1/1 human soldier. When Thalia's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other human you control. And then whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. So I have 4 of those in this deck, which is great. She's pretty cheap, so if you have, one other human out, then you can still play her. It's kind of hard when, on turn 2, if you don't actually have any other humans out on the battlefield yet, and you have Thalia's Lieutenant in your hand, because you can't really do her first boost, but at least when you play other humans, you can get a counter on her. And also it helps running 4, so, if you do get other humans, then Thalia gets a boost from another Thalia into the battlefield for the human counter, and then for another human into the battlefield, so it gets 2 +1/+1 counters, if you do something like that. And then I have Hanweir, Militia Captain, which is also 1 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more creatures, transform Hanweir Militia Captain. I am running 4 of these. I think it's a fantastic card, especially on the flip side, which turns into Westvale Cult Leader, was also a human cleric. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. So you have to have 4. You have to have 4 in order to flip her. So it automatically becomes a 4/4. And then at the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token onto the battlefield. Okay, what makes it so good is that it boosts itself every end step, every one of your end steps. So once it flips at the end of your turn, it'll become a 5/5, just like that, which is great. Also, it works really well with Thalia, because it just says put a human cleric creature onto the battlefield, and Thalia says whenever a human enters the battlefield under your control. So you don't need to cast a human in order for this trigger to work. So it works fantastic with Thalia out, because Thalia just gets bigger whenever another human enters the battlefield, like this token. Westbelt Cult Leader gets bigger because it's another creature on the battlefield. It's just overall a fantastic card. I wish I could play more than just 4 in a stack, but it is so great, especially with all of the cheap creatures. It's not hard to flip Handweir, and even if you have to wait a few turns and you have especially if you have 4 Handweirs out, then that's just even more fantastic, once they flip and they are making double, triple, quadruple the amount of human tokens on the battlefield. It's great. And then I'm only running 2 of the Thraben Spectre. And this is where I start getting into kind of the other side of my deck. So I have the human side, which we saw most of the really good human creatures for that. This is still humans, but also has the investigate mechanic. So Thraben Spectre is one plains for a 1/2 human soldier. When Thraben Spectre enters the battlefield, investigate. So you put a clue artifact token onto the battlefield. I only have 2. I kind of want to put more just for the clue side to get a little better with this, especially their 1-drop human for 1/2, which is great. It works really well. You can play it before Thalia and Handweir and everything. So it's just a pretty good card for a cheap human. There's no other abilities, so it's not that impressive, but still pretty good for a common. And then next I have 4 Tireless Trackers. Now this is also going with the clue side of things. So Tireless Tracker is 2 and a green for a 3/2 human scout. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate. And then whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on Tireless Tracker. So it gets bigger with, the more clues you have out and you can sacrifice. It just keeps getting bigger on itself. You get Thalia out, it gets another counter out, it works really well with boosting itself and other creatures when it comes out. And then the last of my humans is Briarbridge Patrol. So Briarbridge Patrol is 3 and a green for a 3/3 human warrior. And whenever Briarbridge Patrol deals damage to 1 or more creatures, investigate. So you put a clue token out. And at the beginning of each end step, if you sacrifice 3 or more clues this turn, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Now, this is where my deck gets kind of interesting, and this is kind of the more fun part of it. So, you have Briarbridge Patrol, you have Thraben Spectre and Tireless Tracker in itself bringing out clues all the time, especially Tireless Tracker. You play a land, you get to investigate every time, which is great. So pretty much by the time you can play Briarbridge Patrol, almost the next turn you'll have 3 clues out, just between Thraben Spectre, Tireless Tracker, and Briarbridge Patrol. What's really fun about this, especially with the 3 or more clues, is that I do have a couple Tamiyo's Journal in here. Which Tamiyo's Journal is 5 colorless for a legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. So it does put more clues on the battlefield. And then you can tap it and sacrifice 3 clues to search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Okay, this is beyond fantastic. 1, tap, sacrifice 3 clues. Tireless Tracker immediately gets 3 +1/+1 counters on it, which, effectively doubles its power and toughness, which is great. Sacrifice 3 clues, you get to search for any card, and then you get to immediately play it for free if it is a creature card. So this deck is very creature heavy, just to support this sort of synergisticness right here. I want to put another Briarbridge Patrol in here, but I'm not really sure what to take out. I think I might remove some of my other non-human creatures, which I will show in a minute, to probably make room for another Briarbridge Patrol, because it's just so great, especially with Tamiyo's Journal out. It is 5, so it's pretty expensive to cast, but if you can get this combo out, it is fantastic. Now, those non-human creatures that I was mentioning is Managorger Hydra and Bygone Bishop. So, Managorger Hydra is just a great card. It's 2 and a green for a 1/1 Hydra with trample. And whenever a player casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Managorger Hydra. So you don't really need the whole Dahlia's Lieutenant human synergy for this to get humongous. Because whenever a player, yourself, your opponent, everyone casts a spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on those cards. So suddenly you're 1/1. If you manage to play another card on your turn, say a Thraben Spectre on turn 4 with this card, it immediately comes in basically as a 2/2, which is great. And then it kind of prevents your opponent really from doing much if they don't want this thing to get huge, unless they have some sort of removal for it. And then I'm also running Bygone Bishop. This is the one where this really helps with the investigate mechanic, which is great because it's 2 and a plains for a 2/3 Spirit Cleric. It has flying, which is awesome, especially the trample flying with Audric, because if you have both of them out, suddenly everything has flying and everything has trample, especially when your humans get pretty big. Here it says flying whenever you cast a creature spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, investigate. So this is cast, pretty much all my creatures are 3 or less, except for the Briar Bridge Patrol. Everything is 3 or less for Audric, Audric and Briar Bridge Patrol, they're both 4. So this will work pretty much with all creatures, so it really helps with the investigate mechanic, which is why I don't really want to remove either of these creatures really, just because they're so good. But it also isn't really fitting with the whole humans thing, but it fits with the investigate theme, so I do like them a lot. Now, cheating things into play. So for my other creatures, I have Archangel Avacyn, which it would not be unreasonable to cast, especially if I already have Tamiyo's Journal out, because Tamiyo's Journal is 5. Archangel Avacyn is 3 and 2 plains for a 4/4 legendary creature angel with flash, flying, and vigilance. I'll stop there and just say, if I manage to have this out and Audric out, suddenly everything has flying and vigilance, which is amazing and really hard to deal with. So when Archangel Avacyn enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. When a non-angel creature you control dies, transform Archangel Avacyn at the beginning of the next upkeep. So, at the beginning of the next upkeep, you transform Addison into Addison the Purifier, which is 6/5 flying. When this creature transforms into Addison the Purifier, it deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. So this is just great removal. Hopefully by this point, all the humans have had a lot of counters with Dahlia's Lieutenant out. Tireless Tracker hopefully got big with the counter sacrifice and everything. So hopefully your creatures get saved from this, but this is just great removal. And then the real cheat in the play is Dragomir is 5, a red and a green for an 8/8 legendary creature Elder Dragon with flying and trample. When Dragomir enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage, divided as you choose, among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers your opponent controls. This is also another great removal card, and why it's in this deck. It's humongous, hard to deal with, and especially if you can play it for free with Tamiyo's Journal. That's just suddenly a huge threat in the air that really no one has an answer for. Okay, on to the spells. These spells are purely removal. So I have Declaration of Stone, which is 1 and a plains for a sorcery. Exile a target creature and all other creatures its controller controls with the same name as that creature. That player investigates for each non-token creature exiled this way. So I have 2 of those. And I also have 2 of Addison's Judgment, which is 1 and a red for a sorcery. It has Madness X and a red, if I can discard this, which, if you haven't noticed, I do not have a lot of ways to discard cards. So that is kind of hard to do. Usually I end up paying Addison Judgment just for its base cost there. But Addison Judgment deals 2 damage, divide as you choose, among any number of target creatures and or players. If Addison's Judgment's madness cost was paid, it deals X damage, divide as you choose, among those creatures and or players instead. So, just pretty good removal even if you can't pay its madness cost. Just 2 damage, you can even do it to a player if you want to, so it's pretty good. And then lastly I have Fire Impulse, which is a red for Fire Impulse, deals 2 damage to target creature. It is an instant, and if you have Spell Mastery, if there are 2 or more instants and or sorcery card in your graveyard, Fire Impulse deals 3 damage to that creature instead. So paying 1 at instant speed to deal 2 damage to a creature is pretty good, even if you have to, sacrifice a creature and get a huge creature down in toughness. This can deal the last bit of damage or something if needed, and it's cheap and easy removal. For other spells, I have Oath of Nissa, which is 1 green legendary enchantment. When Oath of Nissa enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature, land, or planeswalker card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast planeswalker spells. So, just good. Look at the top 3 cards, get something you actually need into your hand. Now, onto planeswalkers. I do have 3, well, technically only 2 in this deck, but I do have Kythian, Hero of Axos, which is a plains for a 2/1 legendary creature human soldier. So with the whole human side of things, if it comes in, Thalia can get bigger, something like that. So at the beginning, at end of combat, if Kythian, Hero of Axos, and at least 2 other creatures attacked this combat, exile Kythian, then return him to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. So you can pay 2 and a plains, and Kythian gains indestructible until end of turn. So when he transforms, he is indeed a planeswalker. Gideon, Battleforged, which comes in with 3 loyalty. So it's +2. Is up to 1 target creature an opponent controls attacks Gideon, Battleforged during its controller's next turn if able. +1 until your next turn. Target creature gains indestructible. Untap that creature. And is 0 until end of turn. Gideon, Battleforged becomes a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage will be dealt to him this turn. So it's really nice, especially if you can flip Gideon. You can 0 him, bring out Thalia, suddenly, he's 0, so he is a human soldier, as well as a planeswalker. Bring out Thalia's Lieutenant, so he becomes a 5/5 human soldier. So it's just pretty good planeswalker for this deck. And then I have Marlon Cord, which is another flip planeswalker. I just got Marlon Cord recently, so I haven't had much chance to play with her, but so far it's been pretty good. She has a lot of abilities here, so she has 2, a red and a green for 3 loyalty. Her +1 is until end of turn, up to 1 target creature gets +2/+2 and gains vigilance and haste. Well, that's great, because especially if I have Audric out, suddenly I can give 1 creature +2/+2, vigilance and haste, but everything suddenly can have vigilance and haste. So that kind of synergy works well, especially because I don't have a whole lot of things in this deck. As you've seen, I've shown all the creatures already. Only my really, really big ones have the flying, vigilance, trample, that kind of thing. All of my humans are pretty much basic humans, so they don't really synergize too well with Audric, but I do have ways to get around that, and I've definitely played this deck and had Audric actually be a real threat. So that's been nice. So there's that can do that. And then her 0 is put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield, then transform Marlon Cord. So the 2/2 green wolf is really nice because it synergizes with Handwear when it flips into the Westvale Cult Leader. You know, just another creature. It gets bigger, which is nice. So Arlen transforms into Arlen, Embraced by the Moon. So +1 on this side is creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Again, with Audric, suddenly you can have all your creatures have trample. -1, Arlen, Embraced by the Moon, deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Transform Arlen, Embraced by the Moon. So just good damage right there. It's nice. And then -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control have haste and tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player, which is really nice. I don't have, you know, my creatures can definitely get very big in this deck, but not horribly big. So this ultimate, while nice, is not necessarily needed in this deck. A lot of it's mostly like pumping up creatures, hopefully giving everything else, you know, trample, or just dealing, you know, burning the creature or player. But yeah, this is nice, so I can immediately have it deal damage to a creature or player. So that's Marlon Cord, and then on to the last Planeswalker in this deck, which is Nahiri, the Harbinger, which is 2, a red and a white for 4 loyalty. Her +2 is you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So this is the only card in my deck that will allow me to discard a card for Avacyn's Judgment. So I could discard that into Madness only with Nahiri. So that's kind of tricky, and why I usually end up just paying Avacyn's Judgment's base cost of 2 to deal just 2 damage instead of X damage. But her -2, exile target enchantment, tapped artifact, or tapped creature. This has come in handy more than once. So I definitely play her more for her -2, really, than her +2, because I don't have a lot of cards that I really want to discard in this deck. But it is really nice, at least, to just, you know, get rid of a creature. And then her -8, you can search your library for an artifact or creature card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. It gains haste. Return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So that works well. Her, you know, another way to search my library for something that I want. Could even do something crazy, like, you know, search for Dragomir Tarka, put it out for, you know, 5 damage, and then return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. But then, if I happen to sacrifice 3 clues in a turn, I could play it again and don't need to return it to my hand. So, with Briarbrick Patrol, at the beginning of each end step, if I sacrifice 3 or more clues, I can put a creature card from my hand onto the battlefield. So, especially with that, I can just keep, you know, return a Tarka to my hand, play it again, just deal more damage every time, which would be great. I've never gotten to that point. It's pretty hard to do. -8 for only 4 loyalty Planeswalker is pretty hard, even though she does have a +2. In this non-madness deck, it's a little hard to keep discarding cards, but it is nice if I have something like Fire Impulse and my, you know, opponent doesn't have any creatures to target, then why am I keeping it? So yeah, that is pretty much all of the cards in my deck. I do have quite a few double tap rare lands from this Shadows of Innistrad and Battleforge Zendikar sets, which are, you know, enters the battlefield unless you control 2 or more basic lands, and you may reveal cards from your hand, so it comes in untapped. So I have just those rare lands for other stuff. Yeah, there's obviously not much red in this deck, so it can be hard to play some things. I have 2 double tap red and green lands, and I also have just 3 basic mountains. I have more white and green, and I can usually get away with playing this deck without having any red at all, because I sometimes don't draw any red cards. So that's especially nice with Tamiyo's Journal, and that I can potentially find a red creature and put it out, or even some bigger things like Addison if I don't have any white. So I feel like this deck, it synergizes pretty well. I've definitely made a lot of changes to it since I made it, which I haven't even had it for all that long. But it's been really fun to play. I have sacrificed 3 clues to Tamiyo's Journal and had Barber Patrol out, got Tarka out. I think I managed to do it again, because surprisingly, even though there aren't very many things that have clues or that bring clues out, I can surprisingly rack up a great number of clues. So it is really easy to sacrifice clues to Tamiyo's Journal. And even probably by that point, I have enough mana just to sacrifice 3 clues. Because with mana, that's obviously not ideal. That's 6 mana just to sacrifice 3 clues. But, if I have Tamiyo's Journal, or if I have Barber Patrol, that's great. I can just drop a huge creature from my hand onto the battlefield. And that's basically the end game for this deck. Get something huge out for free and win. So yeah, that's my deck. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm definitely open to any suggestions. I know that this deck is by no means perfect, and I have removed a lot of red that I did have in it. It used to be pretty much a red-white deck, and I've actually made the green a lot stronger and the red less prominent in here. But I do like the 2 Planeswalkers in here and Marlon Cord. They're fun to play. But yeah, so let me know what you think in the comments, and like and subscribe to this channel. Thank you everyone for listening, and hope this has been relaxing for you. So good night.